Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Metropole TV, the first 24-hour news business channel here in Kenya and East Africa. This is The Smart Investor, and I'm your host, Ali Khan Sacho, and it's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Let me start with Kenya and the Stanbic Kenya PMI Index. PMI indices exist all over the world, and investors from everywhere look at these indices, and normally what people are looking for is above 50 means the economy is expanding. Below 50, it means the economy is contracting. And actually, in most parts of the world at the moment, we're around 50. And I'll get to that external environment in a little bit. But here in Kenya, we dipped below 50 to 49.3. This is the first time since, I think, first time for quite a while. And what that tells us is the economy is contracting. And of course, we got hit with that whammy with higher food prices, the lack of rain, big inflationary surge, and you can see that in that PMI index. Nevertheless, business sentiment remains strongly positive in April, dipping only slightly from March's 54-month high. So that's interesting, isn't it? Optimistic, yet the economy is contracting marginally. And if you look through the data points in this report, new orders were down, output was down, but what was up was new export orders index. And that's telling us that I think that AGOA-facing businesses like the textile industries are doing relatively well. So overall, a disappointing number, and I think a lot of people will be watching this very carefully for next month. Employment declined slightly, so jobs were lost. And this is an interesting point which we've been hearing in a lot of our interviews. Cash flow issues were noted by many firms reporting falling new orders. So we got to be watchful. This is telling us that the weakness that we've been hearing about is beginning to feed through into these indices. So that's an interesting cause and effect. Now, I wanted to revisit Safaricom's results. Of course, it is a profit machine. M-Pesa itself makes more money than the top 4 banks at the stock exchange, which is an incredible situation. And the more I looked at these results over the weekend, it's clear that M-Pesa is the jewel in the crown. And M-Pesa was responsible for 75% of the growth in profit year on year. The importance of Safaricom is that it constitutes nearly 50% of the stock market. So where that 50% of the stock market goes makes a huge impact on the rest of the market. Now, looking at these results, voice, this is you and me calling each other, which people had pronounced dead and buried long time ago, but is still going reasonably strong. Voice is still the biggest revenue line item in the Safaricom P&L. And voice revenue basically grew 0.3%, notwithstanding that prices dropped by 10%. And what this is about the demographic dividend, the fact that Safaricom got 2.3 million new subscribers year on year. That's what's underpinning Safaricom's voice business. For them, it's a dividend. For the likes of Bouteflika and Bashir, it's turned out this demographic dividend to be a youthquake. And it's interesting, isn't it, that for the business it's strong, but for the politics it's changing the dynamics quite dramatically. So voice is not dead. It's this new customers, which is proving a rising tide, and a demographic dividend. Mobile data revenue grew 6.4%. A lot of people were disappointed with this number because mobile data, of course, is the internet, it's the mobile internet, it's 4G. But what happened here, we nearly had a 50% price drop in the price per megabyte. So prices halved, and that's why you saw this single-digit increase in mobile data. But make no mistake, what is happening here, we're all getting hooked on the fast internet. It's like driving a Ferrari and then being told to drive a Pro Box. You're going to stick with the Ferrari once you're used to it, because it's a fantastic driving experience. And the Safaricom's mobile data is a little bit like that, right? They want us to be downloading YouTube videos and basically consuming a lot more data. And they've taken a big bet on turbocharging data consumption. They absorbed the government taxes and they placed a bet. And I can guarantee you, if anyone's disappointed, that thing is going to take off big time moving forward. And I think this turbocharging consumption is exactly the right strategy. Now, the real outlier was M-Pesa. As I said, revenues were up 19.2% to 74.99 billion shillings. That's the financial services business of Safaricom, more than the top 4 banks P&L put together. It's really quite incredible. It's on a cusp of a hockey stick, so I think we're going to see further acceleration. They've made the ecosystem richer. The average consumer is transacting more than 12 times, so they're increasing the retention and the velocity of the movement of money within their system. They've plugged it into Alibaba, they've plugged it into Western Union. It's basically a platform. You know, we've spoken about these platform businesses before, like Uber, like Jumia, but M-Pesa is a platform business of its own. And if they can export the ubiquity of M-Pesa, ubiquity is when something is just about everywhere, you can't avoid it. If they can export that into other African countries, then I think we'll all have to upgrade our earnings curve for M-Pesa. So very impressive. That's why I said it's the jewel in the Safaricom crown, and that it has blitzscaled. You know, that concept of blitzscaling, of growing businesses so fast in this new 21st century of ours. Well, they've had more than 10 years at it, and definitely it has blitzscaled. Safaricom also spoke about the fact that they're looking and hoping to partner with Ethio Telecom, and that they're already providing them with services. We're looking at a broader relationship with Ethio Telecom, Bob told the Financial Times. And this was interesting. He said, given the importance of M-Pesa to Safaricom, it points to someone who really understands the fintech business as being a possible successor for Bob Collymore. I thought that was an interesting point by Bob, and probably completely correct. And then just to touch on, you know, I'm going to speak to you a little bit later about the tariff wars. Trump, with 2 tweets, killed the rapprochement between the US and China, stone cold dead. And of course, Huawei has been in the frame. The US is accusing the Chinese government of using Huawei to spy on everybody, spy on Africa. You know that story about the entire African Union building being bugged. Interesting, someone asked Bob about Huawei and he said, look, Donald Trump's foreign policy is not going to govern our business. So he knocked that back, which was interesting. Safaricom are talking about 8% growth this coming year. Tracy Kivunyu, who's a senior analyst with Telemer, said by phone, that's worrying. But what I'll tell Tracy is this: they always set the bar low, and then at the half-year mark, they stick it up a bit more, and then they outperform the newly stuck-up number that they put out at the half-year mark. That tends to be the narrative that I've seen unfold over time. Now let's turn to Africa, and you remember, or you might not, that the Arab Spring began in a small town in Tunisia called Sidi Bouzid. There was this guy called Mohammed Al-Bouazizi, who was a seller of fruits. He was one of those chaps who goes around with his food and he sells it on the street. And Bouazizi got upset with the way the city council was treating him, and he wasn't making any money, and he set himself on fire. And that's what started the Jasmine Spring. They called it the jasmine's a beautiful flower, smells fantastic. And it was the fact that he burnt himself creating this perfume that created the Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia. Now, I wrote an article in 2011 about this, and I said in that article, keep an eye on food prices. Those are sky high and not coming down, and not unlike dry kindling awaiting a spark. And you can see it was high food prices which sent Bashir into the prison where he'd imprisoned so many others before he ended up in there. Then the issue why I'm taking you back to 2011 is because clearly there's something going on in Tunisia at the moment. I don't know how it's going to play out, but that's where the entire revolution that has now come to Algeria, come to Sudan, began. And I said about Tunisia in 2011 is but the first example of the elastic band snapping, that our leaders are so old, our citizens are so young, it just can't continue like that. And we've seen Bashir, 30 years in power, gone. Bouteflika, more than 20 years in power, gone. And this all started in Tunisia with this event that happened in Sidi Bouzid all those years ago, and there seems to be a problem right now. The situation in Sudan, there's a fuel crisis now, and there's no money in the ATMs. Cars queued at almost every petrol station in Khartoum. The Transition Military Council is still in a standoff with the protesters. One banking employee who declined to be named said most ATMs hold no cash. The maximum daily withdrawal is $45, 4,500 shillings. That's the most you can withdraw. It is Ramadan now. People like to spend a bit of money and time with their families. They can only draw $45, 4,500 shillings from the ATM. And of course, they've got electricity outages. And do you know what the temperature is in Khartoum? It's 45 degrees Celsius. That is enough to make anyone annoyed and upset, isn't it? So perfect revolutionary conditions. You can't get any cash out. Bread prices have gone through the roof, and you're hot as anything. So it's still a very difficult situation. I, for one, think that whoever takes charge now is catching a ball of fire. The economy is so dislocated that you're not going to be able to fix it very quickly. People will start getting disappointed. And if I was the military, I would be saying, you know what, you have it and see what you can do with it. Because I really think this is a ball of fire in Sudan for whoever wants to take charge. I was thinking about this revolutionary moment. It took me back to a very famous film called The Battle of Algiers. It's from 1966, I think, by an Italian filmmaker. And it was about the struggle of the Algerians for independence. It's an incredible film. It's in the top 100 most watched movies in the world. If you ever get a chance, it's on YouTube, do have a look, because it shows you that history is quite circular. At that time they were fighting the French, now they're fighting to gain control themselves. It's really a long journey of history, well worth watching. President Museveni, they had a poll in the last few days, and President Museveni is still the most popular candidate, 32%. But H.E. Bobby Wine, the pop star turned politician, he is just 10 points behind. Besigye's trailing last. But I would have thought that President Museveni is getting very nervous watching what's happening around him and watching the popularity of Bobby Wine. You can see that in the enthusiasm with which he's met wherever he goes. I was watching him in court, and he said a few things, and everyone was bursting out into applause. So this goes back to what we saw start in 2011 in Tunis, which we've seen happen in Khartoum. And the question is, does President Museveni have the wherewithal to avoid it happening in his country? Zambia, we've spoken about this a lot of times, but let's talk about it again. Run out of money. There's no more cash left. They haven't paid salaries for about 2 months to their government employees. And basically it's looking as if a crisis is now nearly upon them. Timing the moment of crisis is one of the most difficult things. You never know when it's actually going to happen. You can see it coming. It's like a train. You know it's coming, but you don't know when it's going to hit over here. But essentially in Zambia, it's not looking that great. President Lungu borrowed in the region of $10 billion for various infrastructure projects. The showpiece projects which Lungu had staked his future on cannot be cancelled, but there is not enough money in the country's budget to pay the salaries of medical, military, and educational personnel or other public servants. Talking about huge sums of international assistance are not likely. The IMF and the World Bank are washing their hands of Zambia. In short, without mentioning Zambia by name, they seem to indicate that a country like Zambia would face huge complications in restructuring its debt. And the barely veiled hint was that the IMF and World Bank would take a hard line in any negotiations towards such restructuring. The seeds of crisis have been sown, according to the IMF. I like to study linguistics. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means it's curtains. And they're in the end game. The end game is now upon the Zambians. It's entirely unfortunate. South Africa has an election this week. This is a very, very big deal. They go to the polls on the 8th of May. A big ANC victory would trigger a good rally in the rand and a good rally in the stock market. The stock market's been pretty good this year. It's up about 12%. But really, it's all about the margin of victory. The ANC used to win these elections with more than 60% of the vote. Under President Zuma, they got, I think, 54%. So Cyril needs to do better than President Zuma. And basically, if he gets a good number above 60, you'll see a strong and positive reaction. Goldman Sachs, Colin Coleman, and remember Tito Mboweni, the central bank governor, the Minister of Finance, he worked for Goldman Sachs as well, saying that if the ANC reaches 60%, then the market will be very bullish, according to him. And then somebody else saying the worst case scenario, if the ANC falls below 55% and Julius Malema's economic freedom fighters wins more than 12%, that's going to be the worst case scenario. What do they mean? They mean there won't be a mandate. It'll be very difficult to make things happen, and that they'll go down that populist wormhole that South African politicians like to go down. President Ramaphosa, quoting Ben Okri, said, "We dream of a new politics that will renew the world. Under their weary, suspicious gaze, there's always a new way, a better way that's not been tried before, and let's hope that he finds that new way, because if he doesn't, it's going to be a problem." South Africa has been in the slow lane throughout that Zupta economics period where so many things went wrong. International markets, big news over the weekend, and guess how? Via Twitter, President Trump tweeted, "For 10 months, China has been paying tariffs to the USA of 25% on $50 billion of high tech and 10% on $200 billion of other goods. These payments are partially responsible for our great economic results." They're not. There's no correlation between those two. The 10% will go up to 25% on Friday. Now, he's meant to be in some kind of discussion, rapprochement with Xi Jinping, and he's signaling that he isn't. And everyone's wondering, is it a game of poker? Is he playing bluff? Is it bluster? Is he going to roll over? Or is this what he really is thinking, and he's going to stand up to Xi Jinping? We're going to find out now in the next few days. Xi Jinping's crack team was meant to be flying over to the US this week. It's not clear if they will or they won't. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. Now, a lot of the administration is split. You got people like Steve Mnuchin, and you got others like Larry Kudlow, who are supportive of a deal with China. And then you've got his negotiators, one of whom is called Robert Lighthizer. And what they're saying is Lighthizer met Trump over the weekend. He says the Chinese are backsliding. They're not doing what they promised they would do. And this is how Trump reacted. The Chinese currency got whacked. Let's have a look at this chart. It was up nearly 800 pips on this announcement. The stock markets in China got smashed. Hang Seng, which is not a Chinese stock market, but nearby, down 3.1%. Shanghai down 5.6%. CSI 300 down 5.8%. Shenzhen Composite down 6.7%. And think about this. If this trade war goes horribly wrong, that Chinese currency, which I just showed you, is going to leapfrog 7. And then all bets are off, because then they were going to get into a competitive devaluation. And I like this tweet that I read. Once China devalues its currency, there will not be a chance for a trade deal. It will be unrecoverable. The world will have to seek a new structure, and likely major, if not physical, conflicts will develop out of the dregs of this horrendously handled process and grand deception. Now, I wrote about this tariff war. It kicked off actually in July last year. There's a very famous James Dean movie called A Rebel Without a Cause. And in that movie, James Dean is one hero, and there's another guy, and they're trying to win this girl's hand. They both want her to be their girlfriend. And they do what's called a chickie run, when you both get in a different car and you race to a cliff, and the first one to jump out loses. The one who jumps last wins and gets the girl. And this is what Xi Jinping and Trump are doing. They're in those cars, they're driving at top speed, but it's not a girl they're after, it's these tariffs that they're trying to settle up. Let's see what happens there. And some months ago, you'll remember there was an incident with the USS Decatur. The USS Decatur is one of their ships. I think a Decatur is the name of a knife. So it's meant to be like a knife, the Decatur. And they came within 45 yards of each other and nearly crashed. And I said that's more of a sign of what's happening in this tariff war than all the positive chat that we were hearing coming out of some of these members of the administration. The US has sent USS Abraham Lincoln plus a carrier and its accompanying ships, as well as what is known as a bomber task force, to the Middle East. In response, they say, to a number of troubling and escalatory indications and warnings. National Security Advisor John Bolton, who's been wanting to go to war with Iran since he was a toddler, and now maybe he thinks he's finally got his chance. The United States, he says, is not seeking war with the Iranian regime, but we're fully prepared to respond to any attack, he said. Let me finish off with the oil price. The oil price remains key to the world's economy. And I saw this quote from the Saudi oil minister. He said, "Let Allah decide the oil price." Adding that no one can set the price of oil. He said, it's up to Allah. I don't think that's strictly accurate. People can set the oil price, and the oil price currently is around $61.50 a barrel. It's up about 33% year to date. Bitcoin is up about 40%, oil is up 33%, and guess what's third? Safaricom, up 30%. Thank you for watching the first half of The Smart Investor on Metropole TV. We'll be coming back in the second half with the CEO of Jambopay, that's Danson Muchemi, to talk to us about the whole electronic payment system, about Jambopay, about being a decade at the helm of that same company. Please join us after the break. My name is Ali Khan Sachu. This is Metropole TV, and this is The Smart Investor. Welcome back to Metropole TV, The Smart Investor. I'm your host, Ali Khan Sachu, and we've got a great guest here in the studio. We've got Danson Muchemi. Danson is the CEO of Jambopay. Danson, thank you for making time. Thank you. Danson, obviously, just describe to us what your company does.
Jambopay is a digital financial service provider. We help businesses, governments, and private companies and individuals to digitize payments. That's giving them a platform through which they can automate their revenue collection and disbursements. So we got a platform that is multi-channel. It has mobile. You're able to transact on mobile, and on web through major cards, through a network of agents and banks. So we essentially automate revenue collection and payments.
Most people would know you in connection with the Nairobi County because you also gave everybody free parking, I think, last week.
Yes, on Monday.
I hope that was worth the publicity. I'm sure it was.
Yes, it was.
Everyone talked about it.
So, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that would be an example of you helping a local authority or a county or to collect, and that's where now, Danson. We started by you were telling me you started 10 years ago in View Park Towers with a laptop. Is that correct?
In a cyber, actually.
So you're the ultimate entrepreneur. You've really done it.
Yeah, we're trying.
Yes. So describe that journey. You start.
Okay.
Did you identify this opportunity that you've been describing to us, or what were you going after?
So early 2009, and we wanted to do e-commerce. And when we set up the platform, that was mamamboga.com then. Oh, you were doing that? Yeah, we realized that payments was a challenge. We did not have a way of collecting money into a Kenyan bank account when someone is out there making a transaction here. And so we set out to create a digital platform for collections, and while at it we realized it was quite an area that needed specialization and some resources and efforts. And so we decided to focus on the digital payments for e-commerce and other areas like government payments. When you say digital payments, is that M-Pesa payments? Or M-Pesa is also a digital payment platform. Okay. So it's that of a kind. We initially started off as an aggregator. Aggregators basically will go to the likes of mobile money, like M-Pesa, Airtel Money, and all those others. And put them all on one platform. Yeah, Visa, MasterCard, put them all on one platform, and then bring to that business, or to your business, or to an entity, so that you do not have to keep maintaining multiple links, complex computing and transaction processing environments, and you have one dashboard and one view on all the transactions happening wherever. So that was our initial business model, which we still maintain, but evolved into more large enterprise wallet-based digital payments that now support white-labeled wallet, where we can give you a complete platform that would basically be another mobile money, both on web, mobile, and with a network of agents. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, and how many countries are you now in? And tell us a little bit about the ecosystem, how it's changed, and from that day when you saw this idea and you were with your computer in your cyber cafe to today. So now in 6 countries, we have a presence here in East Africa: Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ghana, and most recently we also have signed 2 deals in Puntland for the automation of 2 cities there. Then 2009, comparing then and now, there has been quite some changes, both from a perspective of the technology. Technologies then were, mobile money were basically peer-to-peer, and focused on telcos trying to lock in their customers by giving them ability to do person-to-person transfers. And then over the years we've seen that evolve from just P2P to other more services like payments, bill payments, utility payments. We have seen now move towards lending, more of digital financial services, which continue to evolve from. But that lending has exploded, because if you look at the capital some of these big companies got, it's huge, right? It's bigger than some of the banks were raised. True. So that's where we are headed, and that's the change we see now, that there's also a lot of attention. So in terms of also consumer awareness, then all these technologies were, they were not that deep. They were viewed as people were working with them on wait and see. Yes. They would transact. Trust has really grown. Technology has also deepened, and even the regulatory environment has changed. 2008, 2007, when M-Pesa was getting born, and we do not have proper regulatory environments.
Do we have a proper regulatory
now we
environment
got the central bank has a national payments policy. There are various acts 2014 that regulate and govern the payments, the e-money issuance and the digital payments environment, both at the central bank and the Communication Authority of Kenya. So that has also evolved a lot. We also have seen now mobile money shift, or digital payments shift from basically a strategy to lock in customers and vend airtime easily to a major player in revenues and a major player in so now it's mainstreamed.
Yes.
We are likely to see now, especially in telcos going forward, mobile money and digital payments take center stage. Probably data, voice, messaging could in future be offered for free. They'll stop being competitive points.
Wow.
We are headed there.
That's a very brave statement.
Yeah.
When you see that evidence of that in the Safaricom results, where M-Pesa really was, 75% of the growth came from M-Pesa, and now it seems like, from what you're telling me, is that we're able to export this ecosystem we built here in Kenya into other countries. Going back to the cyber regulatory environment you were talking about, do we have proper cyber regulations now?
Well, at the entry point, the regulator, the laws or the policies around the entry point, those are forming and they have been formed. Now, the bit that we have a weakness is on the enforcement angles. So today, the cybercrime policies.
I saw some big numbers that there's a lot of cybercrime.
There's a lot of cybercrime happening here. Unfortunately, the laws, we have law that is now in place. Now is strengthening that and more so deepening and building capacity around the enforcement of that. The prosecution capabilities, the investigative arms of government, getting them in tandem with those policies and laws. I think there we still have a long way to go.
So having seen this whole thing in the last decade start from like a very little baby, and I remember Michael, when I asked him when he was launching M-Pesa, he said to me, it's just a sticky product. We just hope our customers will stick on our system, and look at it today.
Yes.
And you've seen this incredible development. Where is it going? Where is it, in your mind, what's going to happen? Are we going to have branches, bank branches? Are we all going to do everything on the phone? What is the future to someone like Danson?
For me, because I'm in tech, I see the future as more of, we started, cards came mobile, and a lot of mobile is happening. There's a likelihood that payments will jump out of mobile to your fingers and your biometric, your eyes,
yes,
your optics.
How they're doing it in China.
Yes, that's where we're headed. So that's because there is a race, we are headed to the cliff, and probably that jump will be now from the mobile phone or that cell phone onto the biometrics.
Good grief.
In your face or your veins or your fingerprints and so forth.
Yes.
That's where mobile is headed. And beyond that, probably mobile will not exist. Mobile payments. I also see a future where probably the business models will change from who pays for what and so forth. And by this I mean, today, or a good example, the other day we had school fees. Payments is big business, even for guys like us. And then business model changed. Government decides we are giving free primary education. So probably just out of maybe 20,000 schools, is just 20,000 transactions now going to the schools from one entity that is government. And that replaced probably millions of transactions that would have been moving from parents to schools. So there's also a likelihood of a shift of business model that could not complicate, but that would change potentially the future of mobile payments.
Do you believe in cryptocurrency? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, it's a new technology. First, I believe in the technology.
The blockchain.
The blockchain technology.
You believe in that?
Yeah, that's a good technology. Blockchain is a good technology. Cryptocurrency.
Someone said to me it's just old database. They said there's nothing new here. They just changed the name.
Well, it's
is it something new, blockchain?
well, there's nothing really new in this world. It's just how we do things that change. People still send money. Now they are sending through mobile phone. So the identification of, like, you getting to get your unique identification still existed in one form or another. This is an easy and modern way of doing that. So blockchain is a technology that we find, even now, we find useful in a lot of other areas like security, identification, and so forth. Probably cryptocurrencies model is what probably governments have not quite accepted or yet accepted. Probably it's going to, I believe it's going to evolve into more acceptable technologies and forms in the near future that we'll see now financial players, regulators, and other stakeholders take keen interest in and probably participate in.
Let's go back to your business. 140 people, you're telling me.
Yeah.
Must be a
154.
Are you happy
employees.
to share some numbers as to what the turnover is, or is it all private?
I'm only able to say we turned 10 years last week. We have now slightly over 5,000 corporate clients.
Yes.
And slightly over 2 million subscribers. That's guys who have our wallet. And and 15,000 pay points. These are agents on the ground.
For Jambopay?
Yes, Jambopay.
Are you the second biggest number of agents?
I believe we are now probably third. After there's one bank that has a larger an agency network. But if you compare us with other telcos, we are not a telco, we are not a bank, we are fintech. We sit between the banks, the telcos, and other players.
Who's your competition?
Our competition is still cash.
Yeah.
We still see cash as the main competition.
I saw statistics that says 96% is cash. Is that correct?
Yes, it still is cash. Probably now is moved to around 80-something%. With the growth of mobile money, but it's still a huge percentage or proportion of transactions happening around us are still cash.
Have you thought about listing?
Yes, Jambopay will list in the near future.
You will?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
You're already engaged with the NSE?
We're still working on our internal corporate governance. There are a lot of things that we need to put in place. There are certain milestones internally that we are working towards for us to get to that. That's still something that is in our to-do list, probably in the next 3-4 years.
And then tell me, if you look at the continent and if you look abroad, where are the environments the most conducive to a fintech company like you're describing? Actually, the conducive environment is these fintechs thrive in environments where we have underdeveloped infrastructure, especially banking infrastructure, not just banking infrastructure, even the physical infrastructure. An example of countries that are vast, road networks are not proper, so you deploy a fintech or a digital platform in that environment. You basically are giving people a big reprieve. You're giving them an alternative, or you're saving them a lot. So I see any markets, especially not just Africa, other developing countries where we have underdeveloped. So are you looking at those as market opportunities for you? For us, yes. We have a 5-year strategic plan that is to grow in to a couple of African markets. We would want in the next 3 to 5 years to be in at least 23 markets in Africa. And the key factor, or one of the guiding factors, is besides the spending power, we're also looking at the development the development of infrastructure. The banking infrastructure is a factor that we consider will executing or moving towards that strategic plan. I mean, those strategic objectives. Wow, so there's okay, now you've had this journey starting with a laptop, 140 people, you want to be in 22 countries now, that's your next target. Yeah. What is the secret to that journey? If you look back on it, what are the lessons you learned from there? What decisions did you have to make that you made the right choice? Do you see that you made wrong choices? what advice would you give? Because all our people are so entrepreneurial. We have hundreds of them watching. What would you tell them, Danson?
I think the best thing we did was starting that time we started, when we felt the urge or that gut feeling that there's something here and you go to. So that was the best thing.
So you sniffed the opportunity?
Yes, and started, because a lot of us will sniff and not start. And then secondly was specializing in the space that is digital payments. So we are known in the digital payments world because we focus on that space, and so we have developed special competencies and skills in that space. And then we quickly have we take companies, so we developed a platform, so we are agile, so ability to adapt and customize our solution to the various needs of our clients for various markets. That also has been a good thing. So for the entrepreneurs or guys out there who probably look at this, I see there is not a better time to start something than when times are tough. A lot of guys are saying, just saying that
every time I get people here, they're all telling me it's tough.
It's tough. It's true. It's tough. So getting to start, but starting a refined, quite distilled solution, because in tough times, that means you have to not start in luxury of plenty and sufficiency. And Jambopay is very lean. We have
lean.
Our platform can run the whole of Africa, because we refined. When we started, we did not have capital. That's why we started in a cyber cafe.
Yes.
And so we refined.
When did you need capital for the first time?
The Jambopay has grown organic.
You've always grown organically?
We have grown organically. It's just probably now in the coming days or months, we are looking at fueling our growth across Africa by probably looking at other sources of finance. But Jambopay has, over the last 10 years, grown organically. So we've not fundraised at all.
That's a great story, right? But I mean, you're telling me, but now if you really want to accelerate it, you might have to do
we might have to do that. So I was at the point that starting at a point like this, where times are tough. So that means the environment is looking for new ways of doing things that is more efficient, more effective. So by the way, we at Jambopay have now decided to offer our platform for other fintechs.
Yes.
So if you're keen on
a platform of platforms.
Yeah, so if you're keen on starting a fintech and times are hard, you can piggyback on Jambopay. We can give you
what does that mean? What can you give? Can you give somebody?
We give you complete from data centers to connection to hotel calls, to connection to multiple banks, over 28 banks, to even access to the market or potential consumers. We got over 2 million subscribers. We are seeing any fintech that has a good product that is viable, that we can target these 2.1 million plus with. You can just come, we white label for you, we give you transaction fees that are rock bottom. You do not need to invest in a data center, you do not need to invest in call centers, you do not need to invest in those links and connectivity. You just basically need to package your product, set your tariffs, and do the marketing.
Wow. So are you encouraging people to do that with you?
Yes, and we already got a couple of fintechs that run on I think we have now around 5. So this is the kind of an environment we see ourselves grow on coming probably a couple of years.
I hear a great story. Any mistakes?
Yes, we've made quite some. I've learned a lot.
Yes.
I'd like to see them as lessons.
Yes.
One of those was when we in 2000 and I think we were 4 years, and we got into a relationship with one of our clients who thought we thought maybe we could team up with a client or a potential client and create a very good case of the terminals. You know, we wanted these vans, the supply chain that move around selling fast-moving consumer goods to.
You were going to put something in the hands of the salesman,
so that they don't have to carry cash.
Yeah.
But I think we went beyond that relationship and sort of allowed them, or accepted to allow them into the organization, and we ended up in. We were almost allowing them, but we ended up with those guys taking our brand and creating a Jambopay Express. And so it was a painful process of having to watch someone else use your brand out there or try to impersonate you. And they left us and created another company that looked like us. Somehow we eventually, when we got stronger, we went to court, and so they were stopped by the court from using that. They were actually deregistered. So, but it was a tough thing, and trusting too much, that was trusting the wrong people too much. That was a terrible mistake. And I think trusting too soon was one of those mistakes. I think there is one other market that we went directly. We did move to Tanzania and decided that this market, we hear it's tough. Let's try and see how tough that can get. And it was tough. And we let alone had to reconsider that and move into Tanzania through some partners. But we spent a lot of time and resources in that market. It's a tough market.
Danson, Muchemi, we've run out of time. It was a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you
for
so
sharing
much.
your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
That was the Chief Executive Officer of Jambopay in the very sexy part of the Kenyan economy, from what you could hear. This is digital payments. My name is Alikan Sachu. This is The Smart Investor. It's been a pleasure having you watch us through this 1 hour. Thank you very much. Metropole TV, the first 24-hour business channel here in Kenya and East Africa.